The Game Schooler podcast is a weekly audio show that educates new and experienced gamers about the awesomeness of tabletop gaming. In this week's episode, we'll cover Concept Kids Animals, our game of the week, discuss house rules for younger gamers in the School of Gaming, and wrap it up by revealing our high five relaxing games. Welcome to the Game Schooler podcast. I'm your host, Doug Kotecki, along with my co-host, Dr. Michael McCabe. How's it going, Michael?
What's going on, Doug? How are you today, man?
Oh, I'm pretty good. We've got some good, some bad. We've had some dentist issues.
Yeah, you were ready for that one. Both of us have, man.
But
it's like we could design, what type of game would it be? Would it be a midweight Euro? Would it be a flip and right? Like what type of board game would we design to just chronicleize middle-age dentistry
Crocodile
experiences?
Dentist.
What is it?
Crocodile Dentist.
Crocodile Dentist.
Isn't that a real game? Is that a real game?
I don't know. I'm just thinking right now about the characters and the abilities, some of the constraints.
Got to have special powers.
Yeah, this child's born where you don't need braces, but you don't have two of your adult teeth, so you're going to need a bridge. It appears like you have perfect teeth, but really you're going to need root canals all throughout your 30s. Just, I think we lost all of our listeners, Doug.
An efficiency engine.
Yeah.
How many teeth can you extract? The more, the better.
Do I need that supplemental insurance at age 32, or can I push it till I'm 37?
There's so many ways to approach it, either from the dentist point of view or the patient point of view.
Did I maximize my pre-tax dollars?
But we've had some good things happening. We got to see some freezing cold opening day baseball.
Yeah. Oh, you came just totally planned. Look at Doug. Sound effects. He's loving it, folks. Loving
They'll
life.
never happen again.
What, opening day baseball?
Sound effects.
Okay. I couldn't tell which one.
So what's going on? We did have some follow-up, some great response to our segment last week about pain points in games, which was really cool to see over on the Discord server. People seem to enjoy that segment, so we appreciate that a bunch. Any follow-up from you?
Yeah, I do. I actually have some follow-up going back a couple of weeks earlier. One of our... We're on Discord, and I wanted to go back to something from episode 162. One of our dear listeners almost gave like a half apology saying that they were behind. You know what? If you're 3 weeks behind and you're still involved on the Discord, you're not behind. You're right where you need to be. But they said the best way by far, this comes from Sean on the Discord, the best way, and this is a direct quote, the best way so far has been to set up and have everyone help. So we were talking about how to teach games. And I thought, that's an interesting suggestion, because usually I think about if I'm, even if it's for my family, or if I'm having people over for a game night, or if I'm in a school setting, I want to have something set up. But that was a very interesting suggestion to have people, setting up the components and going through them with you. So that was one little thing I wanted to follow up on. How about you? It sounds like you wanted to follow up on some pain.
No, that was my follow-up. But it's an interesting thing from Sean, because I feel like it's a good and potential bad is knowing the game well enough to know what other people can set up. And I think we do a pretty good job of that at game night, where it's like, here's a deck of cards, shuffle it. So one person's not doing that. If you've got people that are reaching into the box and grabbing stuff out of there as the person teaching it, that can be more of a pain than a help.
Don't touch that. That skull doesn't go there.
That's a expansion. We don't need that. Or it's for two players. It's for solo.
Yeah.
So almost get people to help while you're delegating what is good stuff to help. Sort all these tokens out, that type of stuff. So I think it's an awesome suggestion. Being aware of when to do it right, I guess, is the thought there. Any other follow-up before we move on to what's awesome in gaming?
Well, the other thing, just folks, we do have a Twitter/X account. I guess I'm dating myself. It's an X account. And our game of the week next week is coming directly from a poll. Didn't have a whole lot of response. You'll have to do some research if you want to go out and see how many responded, but enough to give us some data, which is more than one response. And so you'll hopefully see some tweets being populated out there 2-3 times a week, and I don't quite know yet what that account is going to do. I feel like we're 3 years in on this thing, and we're still talking about what our X/Twitter account could be.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking that will be more of where we interact with publishers and other content creators and designers and things like that, and our Discord will be more of just our Discord. So that is out there. Appreciate some of the retweets and reposts and things like that. And so next week's game of the week, coming right off of that poll, is going to be Cargo Noir, Doug.
All right, awesome. Well, Michael's picking up the slack there on the Twitter/X, so I appreciate that.
No, hey, we're all about the hype and the hotness here. We're so hot this week. We're at 2017 or 2019, and next week we're at 2011. Where were you, Doug? In middle school at 2011? Did you have a ponytail?
I think so.
I mean,
yeah, more hair, that's for sure. I wanted to. I talked to Michael briefly about this, but I'm going to just throw it out there. And let me know on the Discord if this is something you want me to continue with. But I thought it would be interesting is there are games that are in my collection and on our shelves that don't often show up in high five lists. They don't show up as game of the week. And so I kind of want to, I'm just going to go through my Calyx shelves and highlight the games that are on my shelf that are in my collection. I enjoyed when we went. Michael's collection is a lot more in flux than mine is. He's got stuff going in and out all the time. It's like a revolving door over there. Mine is certainly the stuff that's in the Calyx shelf in my game room is pretty well situated. And I enjoyed talking and following up on the games that we wanted to play and what we thought about them afterwards and stuff like that. So I thought it would be a great way to kind of inject some more games into our podcast instead of just the game of the week and the high five with a little bit of a different approach. So starting on the upper left-hand side of my Calyx.
You're going full coordinates.
As of right now. And so it'll be interesting.
So starting with the Days of Wonder, go ahead.
Yeah, yes, you know my shelves. All my games for the most part are sorted by publisher, and I've tried mixing them up in different ways, and then I can't find anything. So it's best if I can locate the giant block of games that may come from, and then narrow it down from there. So the upper left-hand corner has Days of Wonder games on it. So we have the Ticket to Ride India map, which is a map expansion for Ticket to Ride, and it's got two sides to it. One is a Switzerland map, which is more for 2 to 3 players. It was originally a standalone game. And so that's got some really tight coordinates on there, and you get rewarded for kind of going into different countries and stuff like that. On the other side is the India map. And you want to talk about tight quarters. The number of 1 or 2 train length routes in that map is out of control. But the way that you get points for that one is if you can connect to a city, from one city to another city in multiple ways, you get more bonus points. So without using the same trains over and over again, I think the first one you do is 5 points, then 10 points, and then they start going up by 10. So if you can connect, using the American map, for example, if you could connect Washington D.C. to Chicago by 3 unique routes, you'd get an extra 30 bonus points.
Cool.
Which is pretty cool. The next one on the shelf is, and interrupt if you have any questions.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I have an appointment at game night in 2 hours and 25 minutes. So are we doing just one Calyx cube, or are we doing one entire 5x5 Calyx?
No,
I'm here for it, Doug. I just needed to get a message out to the guys that I game with.
One Calyx cube.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. No questions at this point. Back to you.
Okay. The next one is Small World, which is a great little area control game. That the cool part on that one is you're combining a race with I don't know, 2 different things. It's like, so you might be flying goblins or something. It's It's a race and an adjective, basically. And you collect those, and each side kind of gives you a special ability. You're putting guys out on the map, and then the tricky, cool part of that game is you have to decide when to put a race in decline and move on to another kind of civilization. But those people that are out on the board can still score you points even though you've moved on from them. So that's a pretty cool game. 5 Tribes, the Jinns of Nagala, is one that I'm not sure. This is one that I got to get off the shelf and kind of play because I think by today's standards it might not stay in my collection. It has a Mancala mechanism in which you're picking up all of the meeples on one square, spreading them around the board, and then the last meeple you drop off, you're collecting all of the meeples of that color from that location. And you get bonuses if you clear a location, and each colored meeple kind of has a different power and ability. The problem with this one that I had a long time ago was there's a lot of AP analysis paralysis in this game that I'm wondering if my current season in gaming would allow as much as it maybe did back then. Because every time it's your turn, there's a plethora of options, and the board
Great word choice.
Thanks. The game board has completely changed from the last time you had a turn. So it's almost like every turn you kind of need to recalibrate and mentally picturing out, okay, if I pick those up, I can drop them here, 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 here. I don't like that. I can do this, this, this. So there's a lot of processing time that goes into that game. And I enjoyed my play of it, but like I said, I'm wondering how it would hold up to the way that I enjoy playing games now. The last 2 on there are Pirates Cove, which we talked about in length.
I got it. Keep going.
Some episode that Michael will look up and share with us. But that is a cool pirate game that kind of gives you all those piratey themes of building up your ship and crew and pirate attacks and burying treasure, all the cool stuff wrapped up in a 60-minute or less playtime, which I think is cool. And then the last one
we haven't talked about that one, Doug.
What's that?
We have not talked about.
We've never. I thought that was a game of the week. No.
Nope.
Well,
we keep putting it off because of availability, man.
Yeah, I'll try before you buy. Play it at the convention.
We got to get that one in.
All right, and then the last one is still, unfortunately, in the shrink wrap, and that is Yamatai, which is a Bruno Catala game that came out a couple years after 5 Tribes, and for whatever reason, it's too kind of abstract-y. I've never gotten it off the shelf, and I should probably look at either moving on.
How many layers of sediment
playing it
are on it? Is it like in the 5-year, or does it have that 7-year little stack where you're afraid to rub some of that dust layer off because it might peel the shrink?
I think it came out in 2017, but I may have gotten it in about 2019, and there she has sat.
Yeah.
So 5 years of crud from me.
Which is still clean.
Yeah, but that is the upper left-hand cube in my Calyx. So,
what direction are we going, Doug? What are we going to hear about next?
I think we should probably go down. Otherwise, we're going to keep going into Days of Wonder. So we'll mix it up.
We'll be in Days of Wonder for the rest of 2024.
That's a lie. It only takes up 3 cubes.
I like it. That's good. That's a good little segment. And just so that my collection is not misrepresented, Doug is accurate. I have about 200 games that are set.
Yeah.
And then I've got about 150 games that are not set. So they're always...
But I can't tell where they are.
What's
Every
that?
time I can't tell where they are. Every time I go over to your house, you're like, this is the up next. This is the 4 trade. This is another 4 trade. These are lifelong keepers. I love them.
Up next.
all mixed together.
In and out over there.
There's some solids in there.
I've changed it again. Since you were over last, 10 days ago, I read it again.
All right. Well, good. Now I know.
Yeah. How about what have you been playing, Doug? Let's anything to highlight there? Or are we just going to move into the next
one? I'll kick that back to you. You're the one that you've played some good stuff. We've played some good stuff. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I got a Reiner title off the shelf the exact same day that someone on the Discord's like, hey, I just got the kids to bed, played this, and I played it with my 8-year-old. And it was basically one of those where I didn't give my daughter any choice. I just said, hey, sit down. We're going to try this. We're going to play to this score, and then we can quit, because that's kind of how we house rule it. We'll play to a point or play around. And it was Sunrise Lane. We really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's one of the newer games. Horrible Guild published it. It's in that same release time-ish as The Great Split, but that kind of 21 to 23 era of Horrible Guild games that has the nice art.
I thought that just came out last year.
It did just come out last year.
Oh, I thought you said it was from...
Last year is 2023. But I feel like that 2021 to 2023 release era of Horrible Guild, you can kind of see like, okay, it's in that era of games. But you're playing cards out of your hand and building houses that match the color, very Reiner style, right? But then you can, on your turn, you can also play a card of any color and set a park down so that you can continue playing cards. And then you score points based on the number of cards you play out and the number of pips that are on the area where you're playing. And it was just fast. Selfishly, I wanted to see how the multiplication would play out with my 8-year-old. And if she would really pick up on that. Like we had just come from doing a partial play of Concept Kids, the game of the week this week, and I wanted to see where she was at and just have some fun gaming. I was just surprised at how quick she picked it up, man. Quick enough where I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. This game's going to stay and hopefully get it played with some other people. You and I also have Board Game Club coming up. I don't know if you know that yet, but I already entered your paperwork in illegally. I wouldn't do that, but I thought about it. And I think it's a game that I could take in there and get up and running too. So good little game.
Cool. Yeah, no, that sounds awesome.
And other games as well, but I'm going to hold them for later in the show.
Okay. Something that is awesome is just got announced. It's coming to GameFound on July of 2024, and that is DC Heroes United.
I thought you'd say that.
So there is a DC Comics version of Marvel United coming out. So I'm looking forward to that. That's one of those just take my money now type of things. I'm more of a Marvel fanboy, but I do love me some Batman, and so I'm looking forward to that. I'm trying to find. There was a. Here you go. I was looking for a comment. I was looking on Board Game Geek, and normally I find Board Game Geek a cesspool of negativity and people overreacting to things and a storm of condescension. However, I did have to laugh about this comment where somebody put, I'm already disappointed in the characters that won't be included. Can we get a season 2? And so,
have they done a full announcement though on it?
No, that's
okay.
What's funny about it, because that is the complaint that comment will be happening over and over again by the end of the campaign of like, whoa, they didn't have this guy, and it's the most obscure characters in the world, and they won another set already. So I thought that was kind of funny.
They did that with the Marvel Universe, and you have 6,800 characters to choose from. You know, how many minis do you want Doug to paint, people?
I'm here for it. All right, anything else before we move on?
No.
All right. I want to remind everybody to sign up for the Discord if you want to communicate and interact with like-minded individuals. Gameschooler.com/Discord. You can find all the details there. Spread the word about the podcast if you like what we're doing. That helps us immensely. And contact us with questions or comments. You can reach us email at gameschooler.com. Again, that's email at gameschooler.com. Now let's move on to the game of the week.
The game of the week. The game of the week is an in-depth look at a family-friendly game we think you should try if you get the chance. This week's game is Concept Kids, Animals. Doug, give us the stats.
All right. Published in 2018 by Repos Production, the designer is Caitlin Bougeneau and Alain Rivolet. The art is by Eric Azaguri. 2 to 12 players, which is comical. I'm going to say that I think this is working best under 4. And certainly it could work in a classroom. So that is a place that I haven't tried, is a bunch of kids that are the same age. That's the only thing I haven't tried in this. I've tried one-on-one. Well, probably. But it is possible. But most of our listeners have families with multiple aged kids. And I think in that range, you're probably looking maxing out at 4. And I'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. About 20 minutes, and the ages is 4+, and I can attest that 4+ is a starting range for this. It is a game that does not require any sort of reading whatsoever. It's entirely symbol-based, so it works on that front, and it would be classified as a children's game according to our classifications, which means it does have an age cap. So
there's a ceiling, there's a limit, there's a cutoff.
And this is a 2019 Kinderspiel des Jahres recommended. So that's the German children's game of the year recommended for that. Concept Kids Animals is a cooperative version of the game Concept, which has been adapted for children who don't know yet how to read. In turn, the children attempt to make the others guess an animal by placing pawns on the illustrated icons of the game board. Through this, the children indicates a feature of the animal to be guessed. Basically, it tells you to draw 12 cards and attempt to find as many animals as possible in order to get the most points together. This is one of those that's going to classify more in the activity range as opposed to a set number of points or scoring or things like that. However, it does a phenomenal job of doing that. The game has 110 animals to guess, and they're divided into 2 difficulty levels. So you can play kind of basic animals like your cow and horse and tiger and things like that, and you can get more complex with sloth and specific type of Black Panther, things like that, specific bird types, things of that nature. And there's also, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 kind of fantasy or fantastical animals like a unicorn and Pegasus and things like that. And the communication for children will allow them to discover the world of animals in a fun and innovative way. On the board, there are colors, different squares for colors. There are the habitat locations, whether that's a house, so if it's a pet, or the jungle, savanna, the Arctic, things like that. And then there are whether the animal is a meat eater, a plant eater, whether it's weak, strong, big, very small, medium-sized. If it doesn't have 2 legs, 4 legs, many legs, sharp teeth, claws, hooves, fur, feathers, scales, and then colors. The colors of the animal. Is it a happy animal or an angry animal? That type of thing. And your kids will take these little orange square kind of markers, and you put them out on the areas that to give clues. And then all of the other players around the table are guessing which animal it is. So for example, a tiger, you might put one on orange, black, and a striped, sharp teeth, fur, and hopefully people are getting it and guessing it by then. What I love about this game is watching kids take control. They are in the driver's seat when they're putting out the clues, and there's not a lot of games out there that you can kind of make the kid the boss in the game. And every time I played this, I played it with all 3 of my kids, and my oldest kid has aged out of this game. My youngest child is right in the sweet spot of this game. It's one of her favorite games, and just the excitement that they have when it's their turn to give clues, you can't replicate it in a different game. I've never seen it. And they just light up. It's one that I've recommended to a bunch of people. And similar to Green Team Wins, has always gotten positive feedback that comes back to me.
Oh, that's interesting.
My kids love that game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that we also have gotten the question, whether it's an email, at church, in the supermarket, through text message from a family or a friend, of my wife and I, my husband and I, my partner and I are excited about games, and we want to bring that excitement to our firstborn. They know we have a podcast. I'll just use I language here. They know we've got a podcast, so they'll say, which game? And this is one that is newer to me. I don't have the familiarity that you do. And what I can say now confidently and unequivocally, concept, kids, animals. Because of what you talked about. You can be a 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old who knows animals, knows some shapes and colors, and have a great time playing this game, and have that game experience, have that level of engagement and interaction with younger players that I don't think you can have in a lot of other games at the same level.
Yeah, and the ability to adjust the difficulty, to play with harder animals, easier animals.
Yeah, say more about that, Doug.
Well, the all of the animal cards have a border on them, either a red or a blue, and I believe the blue are the easier ones, and the red bordered animals is where you get to the more challenging ones. And I like the way that it makes kids think about stuff without even having to describe with words, and just think, okay, how am I going to convey this animal and give you the details that you need to guess it? Now, one of the hard parts is with the younger kids, like my youngest daughter, she would get angry originally when we started playing this game when you would guess after 2 or 3 clues. And it was like trying to convince her that, no, you did such a good job of giving us clues, we were able to guess it. But she enjoyed putting out the clues so much.
She's telling a story. She didn't want the story to end.
She'd start with the most obscure thing and then go towards the obvious, and just likes to have that little bit more time of I'm in the driver's seat type of thing. So that's something to be aware of, is trying to teach kids that fast guessing is good, that they've done a really good job because of it. Great for – go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say great for non-readers. And
even
that type of thing.
Non-readers and emerging readers, that level of comprehension that you need to be able to not just read the text, see not just the letter identification and all of that, but kind of that next step. Do you know what you read? I think Concept Kids Animals does a great job of building some of those comprehension skills. Here at the Game Schooler podcast, we define comprehension as a game that requires players to perceive and understand concepts, ideas, and functions. And what you just talked about of getting the adults to guess based on some information that I provide, or not just adults, but it can be other people, right?
Yeah.
I think the game does a really good job of that skill in a much more basic and direct way than a lot of the other games. Many of the kids' games we've talked about have matching. They might have something that's tactile, but this really does capture that comprehension in a way that's unique and different.
Yeah. There's 2 things. One, this has a bunch of game schooler skills in it, especially in ways that younger kids can grasp it. So you've got processing information. There's observation, looking at what clues are being given, the comprehension that Michael talked about. Confidence. Your kid will light up when somebody guesses the animal right, or when they guess an animal right.
They'll jump with 2 hands, go right into victory pose.
The resilience, the patience, so many of the things that we talk about, and I think it's a really good game for teaching those early gaming skills. Waiting your turn, being gracious, not jumping at things. Even the idea of not being upset when things don't go your way, not being upset if somebody doesn't guess your animal, all of those type of things that are such the entry point, the lowest barrier of gaming, those first skills that you need to learn. This does a really good job in doing it in a way that the kids don't even know that that's happening.
Yeah. And Doug, I want to address our listeners, and I just want to call the elephant in the room here a little bit, all right? Our listeners who have probably done the 45 or 30 button and just skipped through this segment. So they might not actually be listening unless they accidentally stopped and are like, are they still talking about this darn kids game? Maybe they're here for the painted minis and the occasional hobby/war game that we might get into. This is a phenomenal game for kids.
Yeah.
So we talk all the time about how do we bring people into the hobby? How do we do this? This is part of that answer. Being able to sit down and play games with, maybe it's your niece or nephew, maybe it's a neighbor, but I'm not saying that you need to have a game on the shelf for every single experience. But this is a game that I've kind of pushed back on for a little bit and didn't necessarily get brought to the table as soon as it should, just because of the amount of other games that we have.
Yeah.
But it really does have a place for young gamers and for kids.
Yeah.
It is definitely in. What am I trying to say here, man? What am I stumbling on?
It's a quality game. It works and it does what it does really well.
Yeah.
I think the other thing about this one is that it's one that it does not have a long playtime.
No.
It's one that the setup is immediate. You are playing immediately, so you're not losing the kids in that process. And you can easily set an end time and go through it. And it's not one of them that I feel like, not that. Anyone with kids and gaming and your kids want to play a game to death and you're like, not that one again. This one doesn't have that for me anyway. It's one that I'm like, all right, we're going to play a couple animals. It's easy to cut off. There's no hard limit of saying, oh, we got to do this many. It's like, all right, 3 more animals and then we're going to be done. And this is one of the few games that I've played with my kids, and then I've tapped out and said, all right, I'm going to be done, and they will stick around for a little bit longer and keep playing.
Yeah.
As an activity, and and even searching out for particular animals that they want to give clues for and things like that. So it does work well of not getting that groan face from me when my kids say, hey, I want to play. They always call it the animal guessing game, not by its official title. It's one that, unfortunately, I've once they came out with it, and it was Concept Kids, and then the subtitle being Animals. I always assumed that there was going to be more,
a series, right?
Kind of a series, and there hasn't been, and I don't know. Maybe it would be hard to make other things. The animals work so well, but
it jumps from animals to the full-grown concept.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Which is, trying to convey the movie Star Wars or Yoda through colors and a whole bunch of abstract concepts. So that's the only thing that I wish there was another version of it.
Yeah. And, anytime we talk about a kid's game, I do think we end up, I don't think it's falling into a trap. I think it's just part of the natural progression of the conversation, talking about the ceiling and the end point. So I want to talk to you about that a little bit, because the first time I played this with my kiddo, this is one where I feel like I missed out because I did a lot of game schooling when Liza was in 4K. She was in 4K during the lockdown, during the pandemic year.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of board games. She's 8 now, and she played it. She had fun.
Yeah.
But I do feel like if it was the first board game that she would have played as an 8-year-old, it might stay a little bit more. So I think there's some of that. How many games is your family playing? How familiar are your kids with games? Are there other games that they go to?
Yeah.
But where do you think that age-ish? Is it that first grade, second grade? Is it most 7 and 8-year-olds will still be able to play and have a lot of fun and want to play it again and again? Where do you think the cutoff is for Concept Kids Animals, Doug?
I think the cutoff is probably in that age eight range, depending on who you're playing with.
Yeah.
I know that if my 8-year-old and your 8-year-old were together playing,
They'd play it.
they'd play it.
Yeah.
If the 8 is the oldest one at the table, or the only one in your case, like you played it, that might be pushing the end of not a huge amount of engagement.
Yeah.
At the same time, I have played with myself, my wife, an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old, and you pass it around and it works.
Yeah.
And it's one that is not going to overstay its welcome. It's like you pack it up when you're done. When people are done with it, you kind of move on. The same way like a game like Similo would be. It's like you might play it 1 or 2 times and then you pack it up and you'll pull it out again and you'll play it 3 times and put it away again. So I think it has that. I think where it really shines, though, is when you get caught up in where the end point is the idea of that there are not a lot of games that you can get your kid to the table with at 4 years old.
Right.
This one shines is that it can go as low as it can.
And
because
they are making decisions.
Yes. Yeah. It's not just roll the die or flip over a card and see what happens. They are in the driver's seat running it, and you can't get that. I don't know of another game that has that as low as 4.
No, I went through our list today from top to bottom, and I looked at other kids' games, and this is about our 6th, maybe 5th, how you want to classify it today in real time, but kids' games. And if we take Outfoxed, for example, okay, Outfoxed was all the way back in episode 64. It was one of our first true kids' games that we reviewed. At 4 years old, the adult is facilitating and leading that game. The adult is coaching up the child through that game.
Yeah.
Hammer Time, Dragon's Breath, a couple of those other Haba games that we've talked about, the adult has to do the setup. The adult's got to put it away. The adult's got to do the rules teach. You get out concept kids animals with 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, you can walk away from the table, and as long as one kid's played it before, they're the game master. They're in charge of it.
Well,
they're going to run it.
I think my daughter, who's 6, taught you the game.
I think your daughter is 6. I think I can confirm that. And
that's not the part I needed confirmation on.
She absolutely taught me the game.
Yeah.
She ripped open the lid. Part of Doug's game board is destroyed. I had to say, I didn't do that. I'm borrowing it, but that's how it was when it came into this. And don't blame me for that one, little one. And then she went right into so here's what you do, and started moving stuff around. It was awesome. It was awesome.
So there's not a lot of games that a 6-year-old can set up on the table and teach to the adults and everybody else playing. Like, I'm confident that she could teach that to her friends if they were over.
To her teacher. This is a game where the 6-year-old can teach it to the teacher.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to talk about on that one?
No, I think we got into the skills. We got into a lot of the stuff there. I think we're good to go.
And I think this is, we don't talk about a bunch of kids' games. It's a huge part of game schooling. It gets harder. It is one thing that a topic that as Michael and I are trying to make a concerted effort to make sure that we're still throwing those in there, even though the season of our kids being in this range is passing by. They're going out of there, and it is something that we want to be aware of continuing to kind of keep addressing these games because they are important, even though they may not be as important to us personally going forward as our kids, keep growing.
It's such a great point. And that's why when Haba went out of business, I got a little sad because I know when we go to trade shows,
They're still in business.
I know. But the announcement that was made, blah, blah. Just don't steal all my thunder here yet, brother. When that's one booth that I seek out because I know that's a one-stop shop where I can go and see what's out there for those children's and kids games. And to kind of, so we're always trying to sharpen our saw in that area as well. And we still play them, and we try to approach them with joy and wonder and awe.
Well, and even if you don't have your own kids, a lot of us have nieces and nephews and grandkids and things like that.
I don't have any grandkids, Doug.
Not yet. Well, my brother does. So.
Oh, good. You're right.
So things like that. Even if you're a hardcore gamer, there are areas where a children's game may come in handy in your life. Let's put it that way. And if that is the case, Concept Kids Animals is a great one to either add to your collection or try if you get the chance.
The School of Gaming. In the School of Gaming, we discuss concepts, keywords, etiquette, and helpful ideas in the world of gaming. This week, we're going to discuss house rules for younger players. Very thematic tie-in based on the game of the week that we just came off of. Doug,
Yeah.
I'm going to send it over to you.
All right. Well, Mike was looking for ideas or ways to
Long-time listener, friend of the pod.
shorten or simplify games when playing with younger gamers, which is, I mean, we could certainly get into a whole bunch of for specific games. Try this, try that. I mean, we have I have a couple of general ideas depending on the type of game that it may be. But I think ultimately the thing for me is, as parents, educators, things like that, it's like you have to do what works for you and not worry about the designer's feelings or what Board Game Geek says. If you have a way to shorten or simplify rules and that helps you get a game to the table, do it.
Yeah.
You know, if that keeps your kid engaged, if you don't think your kid is ready to handle a level of complexity that may be in the game, by all means, change and alter it to suit your needs. I think is the most important thing.
Do it and own it. And just know that if there are other people who are deeply in the hobby or gamers, and if they're at your house, it could come off as being weird or odd.
Yeah.
And I think, we try to be that landing spot for new and experienced gamers. And Doug likes to give me a hard time about how much we house rule stuff, but we both do it the same because it comes from a great place. We're trying to get more people involved. We love the hobby. We want to share the hobby. And I've shared this example too, not as a younger gamer, but coming over to Doug's house for game night for the first time.
We had to dumb everything down for Michael.
Wow, that too. But where people allowed me to undo a piece. It wasn't the hard gamer rules that I grew up with in the McCabe household where everything was like chess of, nope, your hand is off the piece. That's done. And just that level of acceptability of, no, go ahead, take your turn. That's all right. Easy going. Yeah. And if you approach it that way with younger gamers too, I just think a lot of people pick up on it. Did you have a specific place you wanted to go or suggestions?
No, I mean, I think one of the things as a kind of a general guideline is I think don't try to force the expert variant on your kids or a lot of times games come with, advanced, basic, family rule, some different variations. And it's like, don't push your kids past what they're capable of handling because you want to have a better experience. I know that probably shouldn't need to be said, but I think it does based on the things that I've read on Board Game Geek.
But I really want to play the gritty mode on Return to Dark Tower.
Yeah, it's like not playing games with your kids is not the time to get in your hardcore gaming needs
Oh, come
met.
on, man. People got to know that, Doug. We don't really need to say that as a disclaimer on episode 165,
that's what's
do we?
sad, is you do. Maybe not our listeners, but if you're first time here, I don't want to be jarring by throwing that out to you, but, know where you're at.
My wife's really good at teaming up to divide up roles. Just last night, we played a card game that we play a lot in the house called Nerds, but we played it with the two younger kiddos, and where one kid was just in charge of managing this 13-card deck, because you have a 13-card deck that you're trying to get it out. It's very much like multiplayer solitaire. That is what this game is, all right? But there's a ton of different solitaire decks going on in the center part of the table. And then another child, the 8-year-old, was just managing this little 4-card. So we basically took the turn and divided up the roles. And not we, I mean she, my wife did that. And I think that has worked for us really well with younger players, with oftentimes teaming up and bringing them onto the adult side to help. But there are so many different card games, whether it's the roll and rights or the flip and rights, where you can also do that with the kids.
Yeah.
And basically divide up and say, no, you're going to work together. You're going to work on that board together and make decisions about where you think you should go. That can be disastrous, but it can also force some of those collaboration and problem-solving skills as well.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to simplify something, if it's possible, is a lot of games come with like variable scoring elements or extra bonus points and things that you can get for accomplishing certain goals. I think one of the simplest fixes is kind of take those out. If there's a base scoring mechanism that, all right, you do this and at the end of the game you get so many points and you're only focusing on that, it's a great way to simplify a game and kind of leave out the first person to get this is going to get these 5 bonus points and the first person that accomplishes that gets 10. And for every one of these, you get 3 more additional points. Like, cut that kind of clutter out and just focus on the core gameplay. And then once they're familiar with that, you can slowly add those things back in. And it's a way that you might be able to get a game that maybe is a little bit more complicated than their, the age of your kid or where they're at are capable of handling. But you can graduate them up. And sometimes there are those extra bonuses that are easy to just take out of the game. And so that's one area that I think is easy to simplify. I think when you're talking,
you walk the walk on that. You do that, right?
Depending on the game. Yeah. Because it just adds extra brain power that my kids aren't ready for to go to that second level strategy.
You're eliminating the barriers.
Yeah. As far as shortening a game, I think this is kind of has a double-edged sword to it type of a thing, which is I think it's awesome setting parameters up front of we're only going to play 3 rounds instead of 4 or whatever variation. Certainly in race type games or where you're racing to so many points or so many things that you can shorten the amount of points that triggers the end game. It's like the game says we're going to do 10 first person to 10 points. Well, we're just going to do the first person to 5 and call it a day. The other side of that coin is also being okay from moving on from a game if it's not working. So, that's not necessarily under the guise of shortening a game. But don't say, for example, we're going to play until we get to 10 points. And then if it's starting to drag at 5 points, be okay and say, we're going to play to 7 and split the difference and end.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you there, but some of the games, if you're playing games that are designed for 2 to 4 players, if you're playing it with one other younger gamer, they can really go on a long time because there's that back and forth, right? Right now I'm thinking of an example that we've talked about probably on 35 different episodes total, but is Reiner Knizia's Llama. That game is played to 40. Well, if you're playing with an 8-year-old who's really good at Llama and who's played a lot of it, a game to 40 can take 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So even right in the middle of the game, if there's an extreme back and forth, it's, all right, Eliza, we're going to play this one to 15. I'm sitting at 11. You're sitting at 12. This will probably be our last hand.
Yeah.
And I think that's, when a game's done. You just know, when the kid's about done and when the game has served its purpose, it's okay to put it back in the box.
Yeah. Give out that fair warning of, one that my daughter loves is It's a Small World. And if you play that by the rules, it goes forever.
How do you modify that one?
Well, we just say the first person to match 5 cards.
We're done.
That's the end. Like, if we played that to completion, it would probably take me 3 or 4 school nights, and I wouldn't be able to get her back to the table. Like, I know when she's done, and that's about the time that she's done. And in your point with Llama, the beauty of that is the more players that you have is you have a better chance of kind of getting stuck is what moves the game along. It's hard to do that with 2 people. You can just kind of plot around. So I think as long as you're setting the parameters up front or giving a couple turns to say, all right, we're going to do 3 more rounds and then that's it, kind of put a cap on it. And again, if your kids are not enjoying it, or you can tell you,
or if I'm not, I mean, I got to own
Yeah.
that part too. There comes a point in time where it's like, we're in round 11 of Llama. I'm ready
Yeah.
to be done with Llama. We're I'm telling you,
Yeah,
this is our
exactly.
last hand. So that's part of it too. When playing with
Yeah.
younger gamers, sometimes it does come down to, goodness gracious, we're 21 minutes into this 10-minute game. It's
So I think for me, I guess the core values are shorten and simplify when you can or need to. Don't extend your kids past the point that they're capable or ready for. And permission to house rule and change the game to meet your family and your kids' needs at the time and season of life that they're in.
Yeah, I have one more thing.
Yeah.
This is a very recent learning. When you are house ruling for younger players, have an exit strategy because right now we're at a point where we have, a handful of games that are really family staple games, and I don't want to say unplayable, but it's not as enjoyable for somebody in the house because of some of the house rules that have been developed. The example that I've talked about over and over is, our 8-year-old, when they were 4 and just starting to play just one, we let them draw pictures instead of using words. Well, now that they're at the stage to use words, all they want to do is draw pictures. And it's very, I don't mind it at all, but my wife and one of my other daughters really have a problem with it. They're like,
Yeah.
no. We need to play this game by the rules as written. We're done with that house rule. And so it's interesting to see, start to think about those younger gamers are going to age up. And at some point, how do you have an exit plan for those house rules that you've developed, or at least just own them that, hey, that was a house rule, but now we're at a point where we're going to use words. That's how we're going to play this, and being able to kind of own when that season of life has made a turn, where you've rounded the corner and you're no longer in just the drawing picture category, but now it's time to play it as it was designed.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, too, on the idea of when to let your kid know that, if you're talking about variable scoring, is just saying, well, the rules say to play it to this or use these other things. We're not going to use those right now. And I think you'd probably be surprised by the amount of times that you could play that game 2 or 3 times, and then your kids are going to say, can we add those other things in? Can we mix this up? And they can dictate that. And so if you're presenting it up front of, we're tweaking this a little bit, and that the kids know that you're tweaking it a little bit, I think maybe that will make it easier to then pivot when it is the time to, no, now we're going to do that. Those were exceptions that we made, as opposed to your kid thinking that is 100% how the rules are, and not knowing any different, just kind of being aware of when you can slide those things in as well. So those are our thoughts on house rules for younger gamers. Let us know in the Discord server if you've got any other ideas or certainly any specific ones that you use in your household for specific games. We talked about a couple there throughout the conversation, but and even feel free to throw out a game and say, hey, is there a way to simplify this? If you guys have played it, there's a lot of helpful folks in the Discord. Now, don't throw out Twilight Imperium 4th edition and ask how you can simplify
Put it right
it
under the recommendations.
For a 6-year-old. I won't appreciate that, but love to hear what your thoughts are, what you do, questions on specific games, things like that. The Discord server is a great place for that. Let's move on to the high five. If you're anything like us, you're constantly on the hunt for new games to try out. This week, we're going to be talking about our high five relaxing games. Games that you can just coast kind of right through and just enjoy them as they go. It's not necessarily about winning. It's about the process and just like I said,
playing and having a good time.
Going with the flow. So I'm interested to see what Michael's got. I had my top 3. I guess I have them in the order of most relaxing. My number 1 is the most relaxing game I could think of. And my top 3 are just ones that I'm like, I don't have to put too much brain power into it. I can just relax and enjoy the ride. So I'm curious to see what Michael's got on his list.
Interesting. My number 5 is ranked 5,598 overall on Board Game Geek. Certainly a hidden gem in my heart. It's one that I have actually taken to Noble Knight to trade in and pulled back off of the desk and be like, I'm not ready. It's one that I have on my trade shelf, but it still sits there in my collection, and that is Bloomtown from Asger Harding Granerud and Daniel Skold Peterson. It's a game when I play it with others, they think there's just not enough there, and for me, it's perfect. It's a tile placement game where you're putting tiles down to match little patterns, and there's wonderful little combos that trigger off if you do it just right. It just works for me. I really enjoy while I'm playing it. I enjoy the setup. I enjoy calculating the scoring after. But the reason why I'm not sure it'll still be here a year from now is I just don't have I haven't found another person where it clicks with yet, right? I've played it with you. I've played it with almost every single person in my family at this point. Just got to reach out to my extended family. Maybe it's my dear mother. But that's number 5 for me, a game that I've really enjoyed and find relaxing. There's a drafting element in it that I seem to find drafting games relaxing, which might not make a lot of sense, but it's that act of I choose that, I do this, I move on to the next thing. I choose that, I do this, and seeing how it all comes together almost in a nice little recipe. So that's the number 5 for me is Bloomtown. 2019 was the year, the publisher's Sidekick Games.
All right. Yeah, I believe that used to be my copy of Bloomtown. Is that
correct?
It is.
It was in your collection. Now it's firmly in mine. Same designers as Heat, Pedal to the Metal.
Interesting. All right. Well, it's fascinating that you mentioned drafting games. This is kind of a drafting game. We talked about it in episode 138, and that is a great split. Published in 2022 by Horrible Guild, Halmer Hawk and Lorenzo Silva, is one that you're passing cards around the table, you're moving up tracks, everything that you do is pretty positive. There's no negative cards that you get in the game. There's not a lot of hurry up and do this, or I've got to complete this goal, or I'm racing around the board to make a drop-off. You just divide up some cards, pass them to your neighbor, you get a set, pick one, and you get the other set back and move up tracks. And I think there is a commonality between some of the games on my list that seem to also have kind of a clean art design that adds to that level of there's not a lot of overt clutter or going overboard with graphic design, that it's like, ooh, look at all these intricate details. It's letting you just focus on the elements of the game, and you don't get lost in extra iconography or things like that. So the Great Split is my number 5.
Great choice, Doug. Great choice. Number 4 for me is a game that was also in Doug's collection at one point in time. I believe the last one on the list, and that's Truffle Shuffle, designed by Molly Johnson, Robert Melvin, Sean Stankovich, and the artist is Dylan Mangini, Alderock Entertainment Group, AEG. So same group that brought Point Salad, Point City, and some other card games as well. I think why this is relaxing for me, this is one that gets taken to a coffee shop. And I'm not just saying that to sound like, oh, this is a game I could play with my wife. No, this is one that truly, if we're going out and about somewhere, this is a game that either one of us will grab. It works really well. 2-player. Let me just say a couple things about the game before I just talk about why the things I like about it. But there's a pyramid mechanism in the game where you could see about half of the cards and they're stacked up. So when you draft, when you take a card, you have to be able to take a card that's fully exposed. And you might know what that card is, but you might also be taking a card that blind, where you don't have the information. And then there's some rummy mechanisms or poker mechanisms where you're trying to make sets that score out at the end of the round. Some of the cards also have some powers, great little chocolates, and the iconography really works for me. There's some wild colors that wouldn't work normally, but the icons are so crisp and so clear that I just engage with it right away. 15, 20-minute game. Plays really well at 2. I haven't really played it at anything other than 2. So that's for me, 2020 Truffle Shuffle, a game that I just absolutely love and am relaxed by and enjoy it every time I play it.
Awesome. My number 4 is I'm surprised has not been a game of the week, and maybe it will be in the future. I'm surprised we haven't talked about it, and that is Kingdom Builder, published in 2011 by Queen Games and Donald X. Vaccarino. This was a follow-up to Dominion for Donald X.
How's it
Vaccarino.
not been on our list? Sorry.
And he's actually won the Spiel des Jahres for this game. But what makes it relaxing is that on the board is a whole bunch of different terrain types, and you draw a card, and the card tells you what terrain type you're going to put your little houses on. So you don't have to think about that. And some people hate that mechanism of the game. I love it. I love not having to worry about that. I drop my 3 buildings down. I get a couple other special abilities depending on where I've connected buildings and things like that. And it just kind of moves, and you just blop, blop, blop. You're putting out your houses, and before you know it, the game is over, and you score the points based on the scoring conditions that are out. And that whole concept of, all right, I don't have 5 cards in my hand. I don't have 3 that I'm trying to, well, this one I could put over here. It forces you into a lane, and you got to work with it. And I think it is probably a common theme amongst all of the games that I have that are very tactical. I think a tactical game lends itself to being more relaxing because you can only do what you can do with the stuff that you're provided with. It doesn't allow you to think of a long-term strategy. And usually in a lot of these games, if you do apply a long-term strategy, you're probably going to get rolled because you're missing opportunities to pick up points along the way. And so that is my number 4, Kingdom Builder.
Man, another great choice. It's been probably 10 years, 11, 12. It's been a long time. I played that right around when it came out. I don't think I've played it since.
We played it once over COVID, I believe.
Okay.
Briefly.
Yeah,
so.
I really enjoy that one. Good. Where am I at? 3, Douglas?
Number 3, yeah.
Number 3 for me is Super Mega Lucky Box 2021 Game Right Phil Walker Harding. I could have picked any number of Phil Walker Harding games. The reason why I picked Super Mega Lucky Box is a little bit of recency bias. We just played it over the weekend. This is relaxing for me when I do want to compete and where I want to play the game. But there's something about during and after the game and the flow of it where the rhythm of the game allows me to get into the flow as a gamer quickly, and yet the game is over in 15 or 20 minutes. And in Super Mega Lucky Box, you're getting dealt a handful of cards that have numbers on them in random patterns from 1 through 9, and anytime you complete a row or a column, you get a little bonus. Anytime you complete the card, you get a little point bonus at the end of round. And it is incredibly balanced. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that when I think I am dominating the game, that's a dangerous spot to be because that means it's a lot closer than what I think. And in the games where I feel like I am out and I'm getting absolutely trounced, I'm probably within 2 or 3 points. So it is truly a race. And it's one that gets a lot of play in our house. It gets a lot of play at Board Game Club with middle school kiddos. I've played it 14 or 15 times in the last year or so. And yet it's a relaxing game for me. And it's an odd one on the list because I probably wouldn't classify it as relaxing if somebody asked me to describe it. But it's one that I'm very at ease when playing and teaching and watching others play it well. The last thing about it plays all the way up to 6 players. So done in 20 minutes, plays all the way up to 6, and one that I really enjoy.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a good one. You could have picked a bunch of Scribbly Gum could have worked well for that as well. A lot of those
Planted, yeah.
Roll and write. Phil Walker Harding games for sure are always good on that level. My number 3 is one that I kind of equate to a little bit of a trick-taking game, but it's not. And I feel like because it's not a trick-taking game, it becomes more relaxing. And we talked about this one in episode 114. That's Birds of a Feather, Western North America. 2022 Snowbright Studio. Tila Fristo is the designer, or Teal Fristo, rather. And it's one that you have a hand of cards. You play some out, or play one out. mark on your score pad, do it again. And you just go through that process, and before you know it, the game is over. It's not one where I have to really analyze, oh, Michael's going after these things, or he's trying to do that, or what cards did they lay? What did the, like, I never get into that mental space while I'm playing the game. It's just very relaxing. The same way that if you play a trick-taking game like euchre with a whole bunch of people that are familiar with the game, there's not much extra thought going on. You can carry a full conversation and just boop, 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 boop. How was your day? And have a full-blown conversation. This kind of gets to that level of relaxation without having to be put in the number of hours into a game like euchre to get to that level. It kind of starts there.
It's my number 2 game. I'm gonna jump
Perfect.
in and just
Sorry.
add. No, don't be sorry. No, you were spot on, man. It was great. So, players play a card, and you score based on the card you played and the card that players played on the previous and same turn. That's it. So there's just enough to track around the table, at the carpet, at the coffee shop, wherever you're playing it.
Yeah.
And then the app works so well for it as well. I think the app just does a nice job of tracking, and it's another game that I wanted to look up the logged plays because when did you say it was released? It was released in 2022.
That's the newest version.
Yeah, Western North America is the version that I have, and have played it 14 times with other humans. So in a little over a year, just a game that gets played all the time in my house. And I think some of that familiarity I associate with relaxation, but everything that you said, it's just you can have that side conversation. It's not the intensity of I have to be locked in, don't talk to me, or I'm not going to maximize it completely if it be the most efficient human being that I could be at this moment. It's a nice little card game.
Yeah.
Great call. Back to you for your number 2, Doug.
Yeah, the original one came out in 2015. That was a hidden gem that I had loved for a long time.
Is that the one you said? You're talking about the one we did for Game of the Week on 114, but same difference.
Same game. The one Birds of a Feather Western North America is actually gettable.
Yeah.
The original probably much harder to get at this point.
And right around $20. I see it for $20 all the time.
Yeah. So my number 2 is some people may claim that this is an activity, but it says board game in the title, Michael, so it must be accurate. That's Dorf Romantic, published in 2022 by Pegasus Spiel, Michael Palm, and Lucas Zach. Just a fun game that doesn't have it's a cooperative game, so it takes that competition level out. There's not a lot of horribly wrong choices or things flying off the rails. It doesn't have the pressure and stress that something like a pandemic can have, where, oh gosh, we're getting overrun here and we got to band together and figure out how we're going to solve this. It just rolls itself out. You draw a tile, you place the tile, and certain conditions are met. You may need to flip over a scoring thing, but you just kind of plunk along, and by the end you've created this little village, and you pick it up and do it again, and you're trying to get little milestones. It's a great little game, great family game, something that once Michael and I are able to get through more of it, I think will show up as a game of the week. It's just one of those that plays over so many rounds, you kind of want to have a feel for it.
And I want to play it with multiple groups. You know, I do want to try to play it with my kids and maybe even extended family, just to really talk about it and see how other people respond to it in the first play. That's really easy to teach, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my number 2, Dwarf Romantic, the board game.
Great pick, Doug. My number 1, you actually already mentioned just a few minutes ago, released in 1848, which I just found out when I looked up on Board Game Geek. And you know what else was established in 1848, and that is the state of Wisconsin. Little fun fact for our listeners. There's no way that euchre came out in 1848. That has to be some Wisconsinite who jumped on Board Game Geek and just beat the Board Game Geek community into that. That has to be just a true Wisconsin game. But for me, is euchre. And euchre is a 24-card trick-taking game where, you know, you're taking tricks. And the reason why I put euchre in this spot, I could put rummy, I could put nerds, which I've talked about recently, and which is available in as 12 packs of cards sold by Bicycle Games. Very smart. But any card game, any traditional card game that gets played repeatedly, where the rules are known, where there's a culture of getting to the table and playing cards, to me, that's relaxing. That's my number one relaxing game. So I put euchre here because we're in Wisconsin. Other parts of Wisconsin would say you should put sheep's head, but I won't get into that argument right now. Could be rummy. I know you have a game in your family that you've talked about is Quincy, right? Which I'd love to play with your mother. I'm waiting for the invite. So this number one slot, it's not just deck of cards. No, it's that, what is that traditional cultural family game that y'all play? And whatever it is, that's what goes in my number one spot.
Yeah.
I in my formative years, it was euchre. In my much younger years, it was rummy. In my dating years with my wife, it was Shanghai rummy. And so that's my long rant there for whatever traditional card game you and y'all are playing. That's what's relaxing to me.
All right, cool. Also started in 1848 was the lumber company that my dad worked for a good majority of his career.
Look at that.
Longest running lumber yard in Illinois. My number one is, take a drink to that. My number one is Tokaido, published in 2012 by Funforge and designer Antoine Bauza. You could also sub in Namiji here if you want, but this one, the art style is another game I'm surprised we haven't done as a game of the week, but either of those. And whoever's farthest back takes the next turn. You move as far as you want on the track, and all of the places that you stop are kind of little set collection things. You're either painting pictures or you're collecting souvenirs. You're having tasty meals. You're making an offering at the temple and accumulating points that way. Everything that you're doing gets you some level of points. You can't have an overarching strategy, and you just it's a game about going on vacation and creating memories, and you just kind of plonk along as you go, and it is the cover, the artwork is very Zen-like, and I think that carries over to the gameplay as well. I feel like I can just set this up. I don't have to invest a lot of brain power. I don't have to worry about it being overly competitive, and just go with the flow of the game. And I think that's one of the things that makes it relaxing. So that is my number one, Tokaido.
Awesome. Do you find Tokaido Duo as relaxing?
No, I find that gets into
more
the competitive.
Intense, right?
Yeah, it's a competitive, intense type of game. It has the same type of a feel as Lost Cities or Schottentotten to me.
Yep.
Where
I think we'll have to get that in episode 166, since 165 next week is Cargo Noir. I think we need to talk about that sooner rather than later. I know it's one of your favorites, and certainly a great game with a lot of skills that can be talked about and bantered about.
Any honorable mentions for you?
No, I just brought in 5. I tried to bring in 5 that aren't on, that were not featured in Games of the Week previously. I could not avoid Birds of a Feather Western North America because of how much that gets played in and how many different settings. How about you?
The ones that were on my short list, and some of them didn't make it for that same reason that you talked about, is wanting to talk about new and different games. But Happy City is one that I find very relaxing, a simple scoring mechanism that just kind of goes along. Ship Shape is another kind of relaxing game. You bid with a card, and then you're just adding tiles to your cargo hold. Sushi Go, you mentioned the drafting. I find that game very relaxing. There's no kind of convoluted scoring, very simple type of thing. And then Tiny Towns was another one I think is pretty relaxing as you go. You can get frustrated if you can't get your shapes to work out, but the process of doing that is pretty relaxing. So let us know in the Discord what games you find relaxing and which ones missed our list or which ones you disagree with. We'd be happy to hear about that. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Follow us on X at GameSchoolerU. Join our Discord, gameschooler.com/Discord. Next week, we're going to be talking about Cargo Noir, why some game stores are failing, And we're going to be doing the reverse of this list, high-tension games. Those those games that keep you on the edge of your seat, biting your nails and all that good stuff. So
Games that get me thrown out of game night.
There you go. The games that Michael can be hyper-competitive with. Maybe that'll be a high five sometime. Maybe I should make that list. Anyway, thank you so much for spending the last hour or so with us. We truly appreciate it.
Now get out there and keep gaming.